Okay, so this is the age-old question because of where we're at in creation. The idea is God created all these things. Again, this is, as people study history, you might say, as a reference, and really figure this out. Okay, so the idea of creation, and this is what, people have been taught by the original invaders, that there's an original creation. And in creation itself, there is. Yeah, we create things. Okay, we're here, we're in creation, we create things. Okay, it's like taking your child and putting them in a room somewhere and say, okay, go ahead and here's all your toys, go ahead and do what you want. You can say that that is the beginning of creation for the child. But the reality is that, see, again, this is a one-dimensional view saying, well, did God create everyone equal? Well, again, you're looking at the human sense of things where we all look different. We all do different things. We make choices. In creation, we make choices to get through this process to figure things out, just like high school. You go through all these grade levels to figure something out to where eventually, once you've gone through the 12 grades, you should have figured something out. If not, you go back through. Until you do, or you go to college or whatever, you go through this schooling, you might say, in creation. And so until you come to recognize through all this process that it is not any of that, none of that. There's no beginning, no end. Creation is what it is. That's it. And the idea is that the reality is that it's an isness. Once you really recognize the isness for what it is, you'll see that creation is really nothing. It has its place, and it seems so big, but it's just like we stand on the earth, supposedly, and we look at the sky and the stars. Well, your awareness, because you're aware of just that view, is bigger. Look at your awareness factor instead of just looking through the eyes. What are you aware of? And see, your awareness is everything. There becomes the difference. So, see, the personal self pays attention to the apparatus or the vehicle, the eyes, the hearing, the senses, and the mind, the emotions, and whatever, thinking that, okay, I've got to add feeling, or I like this or I don't, or attitudes. Again, all these things. Most people do not even go to their intuitive part and gain insight. And eventually, see, now you have the knowledge that there is more, there is this isnness, but you must decide how to see it. So, yeah, the old age idea that, where it all come from or created. See, as you keep looking at that idea, you'll always ask the question, you'll always be confused because it is a distortion. The question itself is a distortion. It doesn't make sense because life is an isness. It already is. It always has been. It always will be. And so you start from there to recognize how it is, and then you see the difference between the isness and how you create thought and ideas in creation. You see? That's really the position, and asking the question, no, you'll stay confused. And then what people do is they ask the question, and you have all these, like as an example, all these Bible scholars. They're translating the Bible and all these things, trying to figure out life. Scientists going into outer space, underneath the sea, chasing rocks in outer space. That's all they're doing. What are you going to find in outer space? You're just going to find more rocks. That's all it is, chasing rocks, thinking that, oh, we're discovering the secret of life. No, it's a one-dimensional idea. Again, it's from the idea of creation. That's why things are so disrupted, all the chaos here, etc., because people are, trying to survive and all the agitation. At the same time, there are those that, okay, well, I want to survive better. I'll just control others in the situation because I have the free will to do it. You see? So again, it's one-dimensional, and everything becomes confused because mainly of how people have been taught and agree to the confusion. So we still have that question. Oh, gee, well, God created everything, and the religions and everything just backing up from the first experience that you told. Again, this is the view that these people have. You know, you look at the church and the Catholics and all this. Oh, it sounds good, but the view is that God created everything. They're established with that. And yeah, they'll take in some pretty words and whatever, you know, and if they can work them so they're workable to keep the masses in line and subdued, yeah, because that's their basic agenda. So again, you got to learn to see the bigger picture of all this. And that age-old question, you know, if God created everything, you know, as an example, why didn't he create everybody equal? You see, because everything is an isness, and we're all just as the isness is, but at the same time, we created the personal self. See how things are all reversed? We created our personal self. There is no God that created any of this. In creation, we do the creation. But what they've done is they've marketed people into thinking that there is a God creating things, so thereby people give their agreement to this God and allows this so-called God or conqueror to control others. So people have subordinated themselves to the idea that there is a creation, there's a beginning and end, which there is not, because all life is an isness. And now we're in the next step, and this is where the world has fallen behind, you might say, and that is they're still looking to created knowledge, information, situations, when it is really time to recognize this is the new nowness. It is time to recognize the isness, because that supersedes everything, and then you will see how it works. But while you're still asking the question, you will stay confused, and you will have these distorted ideas that you create, and it'll just add to the distortion of what's already here. And this is why the world is like it is, you see, because everybody agrees to the distortion. So where does that question really come from? It's a distortion. Again, everybody's going to do it in their own way, which is understandable. You know, an example would be something, you know, just take two streams of river. Just imagine there's two rivers, and the one river is the polluted river that everybody's been drinking out of, and all of a sudden, a new river appears, and the water's all crystal clear and wonderful. Okay, realistically, you know, there's still going to be people that are drinking out of the old river, because they've always drank out of the old river. It's become traditional. It's become their way of life, etc. See, they make choices. So here's this opportunity, and I cannot say how a person will do it. You cannot say that, because it's free choice. It's free will. And would everybody take advantage of it? No. A life that's self-sufficient and without restrictions? Most people cannot even imagine that. You have to go through a process. You have to be willing. You know, it's like you see somebody on TV that they've taken the time to build their body, and they're fit, and they have almost zero fat, and you know, they're just really physically fit. And there's a person sitting there on the couch, and you know, eating potato chips and pizza and everything else, and doesn't care. It's like, gee, you know, see, boy, I'd like a body like that. I'd like to do it, but you have to go through the process of doing it. And so when it comes to the idea of real freedom is actually a position of no restrictions. And first of all, for a person to decide that, that's huge, because, you know, they'll say, yes, oh, I want that. Oh, yes, or I have no restrictions. But realistically, they don't look through themselves, the five bodies, all through creation, what they've decided, especially the unconscious, how many agreements they have where they are restriction, and will they give up those? Will they just let them go? Because everything will still be there. When you give up the restrictions, everything is still there. But they're thinking that it won't be, so they hang on. Yet at the same time, there's a part of them that chases the idea. So These questions are interesting, but there's no real formula to it because each person decides. This is where we are, our own isness, which is real, and we decide. And usually the personal self always comes first. The person always considers their personal self first. There's really not a giving up anything. There is a recognizing what is taking place. And this recognizing is very, very interesting. But for the most part, the personal self wants to hang on to what it's always known, how it's always seen and understood and agreed to what it's known, you see? So again, you can have a relationship with a person and you decide, how that relationship is. Now, no matter how you decide the relationship, even like the sun shining where it's indifferent, that person is still there. Nothing disappears, you see? And so again, how many will take the time, just like the real guides, to see a real relationship, not just more than just a personal. In other words, it's not giving up anything, but it's having a better view, making better choices for yourself. But then that's huge. It's almost insurmountable in creation. That's why very few people can really get this. They see the surface part of it. They see the knowledge. Maybe they see something I'm writing, I'm saying, or somebody else, whatever. It's like, oh, this sounds good. I like this. See, again, it's just those are sound good ideas, and they can start off there, but it's what you do with that and how far will you go with it. And very few people will, because it's a lot, because all of a sudden they're afraid that really there's a fear factor there that the personal self and their relationships will disappear. And it was kind of like when Ava first met me, and, came into this because, she had been with the corporation for 32 years. I'll just use Ava as an example. And Val the same way, And, now all these people have left and she was afraid they'd leave. And they did. Simply because, see, she sees more and they don't want to see it. So again, it's like the old saying, birds of a feather flock together. And the thing is that this is why there's very few here. So, we go in steps at a time and each person decides. So in the meantime, even the projects that we've created here, this is really something to do. And the time factor that's involved because of the choices, again, I'll say it again, this is where there's only so much time. In other words, the time will go on. Nothing's going to stop. It'll just continue to get worse, and it'll just be harder for people. It'll be harder because everybody's basically agreeing for it to get worse. They're heating up the planet, they're doing all kinds of things, and everybody's just, they're just running to the beach and having a great time. Oh, it's a sunny day. And I'm not saying not to. That's not the idea. It's about where their attention and awareness is. They're not concerned with what's taking place because they're not paying attention, and no one can make them do that until they decide to do it. So each person does that individually. The real freedom idea, that's absolutely no restrictions. And so it's not a place you go. You see, again, we've been taught the surface view from here to there. The there is all here. It's a here, there thing, okay? And I'll write about that, and that is, there's no such thing as there. This is something we've created, the there idea. Okay, we will get there soon. In reality, you're already here to where, and it is, once you recognize that and stand in it, then you see everything. But who will take the time to do that for the most part? Because the personal self is more important. There's always, the personal self is always chasing things. So when you talk about real freedom and these things and these ideas, yeah, we aspire to these things, but for the most part, it's like looking at the big mountain like Mount Everest. It's like, oh, I'd like to get to the top. Okay, so you start off climbing and you get maybe a couple 100 feet up. It's like, my gosh, this is getting worse. This is awful. I'm going to go back down. This is too much. And so, yeah, the idea is there to climb the mountain, But to actually do it, that's a different thing. So again, how many people will stand in a real position? This is where I created the reality of, brought this forward, UP, universal positioning, more so. But see, most people, they still want to astral project, they want to do soul traveling, they want to pop around and have their thrills, and that's fine. It's whatever the individual wants, it's a choice. Myself, I see the overall, it's an isness, and that it's like Lacy said in the old days, you don't have to leave your house. But that doesn't mean you don't leave your house. You see, if you take it in the literal sense, it's like, well, gee, I don't have to leave my house because Lacy said so. That isn't what he meant. You see, it's seen more than the one-dimensional point of view. Again, it's like the old idea, God created everything. Again, we've been marketed with these ideas and freedom and real freedom. People think that, oh, gee, I have a wind generator, I have free energy. Oh, I'm free of the grid and I'm free of these things. Actually, there's no freedom here at all. It's all maintenance. Now that you have the wind generator, you still got to maintain it. Is it going to last forever? No, nothing does. You have to maintain everything. Well, what's so cool about your real awareness is there's no maintenance. And then once you fully recognize this, and you got to give yourself time realistically, because you have your personal self to deal with. It's kind of like a mother raising children. Yeah, she wants to get on with her career, but at the same time, all of a sudden she has some babies. Now she's got to, she can do a little bit of her career, at a time, but she's got to raise the kids. And so this child that we've created, this personal self, this helps us compare to better recognize, okay, what isn't real, and eventually recognize what is real. That's very, very important, okay? And do you really see that in anything else? And do you really have that isness reality? So with these other things, no, they just point to other ideas that sound good. So you're just bouncing around. Actually, all these sound good ideas that are created in these paths where people feel really good, it's all off the astral realm. It's physical astral because they're feeling good about it. Oh, they're in balance. They're in harmony. It's a peaceful thing. Great, that's fine. But that's not the isness life is. That's not the real universe is. It's just a feeling good sensation, and you've encapsulated yourself, capitalized yourself or whatever, within more ideas that actually restrict you at a certain time. You'll outgrow those, and you'll go, gee, these clothes no longer fit. It's just like the body. It starts to get bigger. So when you're 4 years old, those clothes no longer fit because now you're 10. You outgrow them. And so this is the same way. This is the same process we go through here. So, yeah, for the personal self, real freedom sounds, oh, that sounds wonderful. But realistically, how will the individual achieve that? And recognize it. It's more so than just an idea. It's more so than, Moses saving his people, parting the Red Sea. And, that was all a cool experience. You're going through all this drama and this excitement and this adventure. And then you get to the other side. And so you see the sea collapsing and all the soldiers there. And so then everyone's standing around. And then all of a sudden they realize, okay, we made it this far. Now what? So, yeah, what do we do now? And realistically, unless you have the real guidance and the knowledge or whatever to, continue to relate to something as a reference, then what do? Then you do what Moses and the gang did. They walked through the desert, or they walked through the land for 40 years. And then, well, what did they do after that? You see? What are they doing? See, that's recognition. They just keep walking. And so, again, it's from the here to there idea that we've been taught. And so this is traditional with the world, and especially, history and all these things and all this conglomeration of stuff. Yeah, anything is a reference, but can you sort out that reference to gain the real freedom that you want? But it's only in your real awareness. It doesn't exist anywhere else. The creation is what it is. And so, again, it's an adventure all its own. And, again, figuring it out is a particular. And so the projects and whatever, and eventually the universal community. This is my focus. And this has to be recognized. It is not a place. It is a recognition that must take place. It's not an event or whatever. It's what is. And so I've decided this because this is my adventure, and I want to see how it comes out. See? So again, it's like when you put the cake in the oven, you want to see how it comes out, and you got to test things. And so it is with the isness life is, and you have to learn to allow this to be so. And it's not about miracles. It's not about changing anything in creation. It's not about any of that. So what is it? And it's nothing you can consider, because you consider everything else that you have to deal with and maintain that basically becomes agitation. But again, we put it in the category of some kind of thrill, but at the same time, where is our focus? So again, it's all very interesting how it all is. So again, it's always more than anything you can consider. So learn to see, in your choice, the difference between creation and what you cannot consider. So again, I wrote what Ava made a few days ago. It's called, what was it called? An episode from New Book 12, which is on the real side, The Unseen, the New Unseen. That's how you pronounce it. It's N-U-U-U-U-N-E-E-N. It's pronounced New Unseen. And so this is the reality of life. This is the true reality. And that is, it is unseen. So you have to learn to see it. And so again, the world has been conditioned a particular way. And as long as people keep agreeing to that particular way, I don't care what the attitudes are. It could be tradition, heritage, rules, regulations, laws, establishment, all these things that people keep agreeing to, they all equal demise. You can see what's going on in the world. Right now, the place is heating up. It's very hot where Ava is, hot here, etc. You know that when the sun is shining, because of all the things that have been created with petroleum, it's all heating up and it causes gases through the whole atmosphere here. And we only have so much atmosphere. Get real with it. And all the cars driving, all these petroleum things and the gases, the heavy metals, etc. I'm not painting a bad picture, but this is the reality of this place. And who will consciously take a look? So with that going on, and I look at it too, I'm here too with the physical body. And that is that I don't have a concern for my body. I take care of it the best I can. But realistically, the focus is on my real awareness, because that will supersede everything. So it's a recognition and not always just running and chasing thrills. But, again, it's choice. So as long as the world is doing what they're doing, and I go outside and I see what the world is doing, it's none of my business. It's their choice, but they're just chasing thrills. And so as long as they do, things will continue as they are. If people woke up, which they won't, if they did, it would be different, because it's in the awareness. And there is a created consciousness here, and people don't see the difference between awareness and consciousness. They're still dealing with consciousness, and especially personal consciousness, which is a fabricated web in creation. There is a difference. Now, we started off with these things, so did Paul. These were the elementary stages to get to the next one. But who will elevate themselves, you might say, into the next position and recognize this? And it's like, okay, how do I do this? How do I figure this out? How do I demonstrate this? Okay, how is it that I do this? Or do I just listen to the words and think, oh, these are nice words that Duane is writing? Is there a difference there? The words I'm writing are hints to something else. They're not just words to be taken in literally and to feel good about. You can do that too. That's part of the personal self. But at the same time, it's like feeding your children a meal. Yeah, they feel good from it. But what's the idea? Why did you feed them that meal? So they can just get up and make noise and run around again and go to the bathroom and sleep and whatever? Is that the whole idea? Oh, I'm watching my children grow up. The Indians, as an example, taught their children always about, the natural environment. And so what are we teaching our children? To be happy, to play with toys, to watch TV, and then eventually they get bigger and bigger, and then they become an annoyance. And it's like, well, why are you doing this or why are you doing that? Well, that's the way you were taught, you see? Do you recognize that? That's the way you were taught. It becomes very interesting. It's very subtle. But at the same time, raising children is a toughie simply because those individuals have free will too. And at a certain point, as I raised my daughter, I stepped back. She's made her choices. I don't interfere because realistically, she's not my daughter. She's another being that I've known, and she makes free choices. I have to respect that, and I want to respect it. I'm not here to manipulate the situation. So, again, getting back to the idea of real freedom, there's so many views on this, and it's not what you think it is. You have to see what's going on. That's a big journey. And time-wise, give yourself thousands of years. Realistically, you think you're going to do it in a few moments, like, oh, I got this? No way. Life is endless. And so being realistic with it and sincere and grateful and all these other things, that's a huge, that all becomes part of that to get through, this process to recognizing that and establishing it. And so again, the time factor is that, until the world gets really crazy, because it's already nuts, all right, it's already totally nuts, and it really is. We just agree to all these things, anything that's happening here, just the cars on the road, the buildings, the concrete, the asphalt, the military planes flying overhead, all this is nuts. It is all nuts. But we keep agreeing to it. And so again, this is where, as we present this to the world, yes, it is a toughie. But if it isn't presented, then the world continues as it does. So real freedom, that's a biggie. Climbing Mount Everest in your underwear, barefooted, would be a lot easier than doing this, because to be indifferent to everything that restricts you, that is a huge view to really accomplish. And very few people will have the motivation to even get close to it. So they're going to, in the meantime, they've got their personal self. It's like, oh, forget this. Let's just go out and have fun and have the party. Just like in the movie The Ten Commandments, where Charlton Heston walks up to the mountain and talks to the burning bush. Well, in the meantime, everybody below is having a party because they're bored. Okay? They're totally bored, so they're just going to have a party and do all kinds of funny things. Then Moses comes back and the lightning bolts come down and everything gets funny. Again, more agitation. See, that wasn't the real thing anyhow, so God got pissed off. Well, that was the astral God anyhow, doing the burning bush idea. That's a cute trick, like a magician on stage. So we've come through all these different ideas. But life is purity, a purity that you cannot even consider. That's what's so cool about it. But who will actually step up and present that accordingly? Now, again, it's not deciding for others. That's the interesting position, too. I'm not deciding for others. I'm only presenting it. That's why I call it the new presentation. Like the sun shining. The sun is not deciding for anybody. If you can get people to recognize what the sun is demonstrating, and that'll take a lifetime. That's huge. Can you figure that out? That's just the first step. So, yeah. But in the meantime, with the personal self and this world, things are doing what they're doing. And so again, life itself is not here to change what people are creating. We individually decide to allow this recognition to be so with ourselves. That's very important to see that. It's not about asking and begging. How do you figure it? How do you figure it out to where you allow it? You want real freedom? You have to recognize how to allow it to be so.